Look what just showed up on the Reg SHO threshold list. This is GMEU or GameStop's 2x leverage daily ETF. And we also saw XRT pop up on the threshold securities list. Now, if you don't know what the threshold securities list is, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how this affected GameStop in 2021 and how it's going to affect it right now. Make sure to watch until the end of the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn post notifications on. First things first, XRT is an ETF that holds GameStop. Same thing with GMEU, and here is a basic breakdown as to why this threshold securities list is important. ETFs like XRT and GMEU are backed by real underlying stocks, aka GameStop. So XRT holds actual GameStop shares as part of its portfolio. And to create or redeem XRT shares, authorized participants must transact in the underlying stocks like GameStop. Failing to deliver XRT or GMEU often means failing to deliver GameStop indirectly. And this is exactly why XRT and GMEU is on the threshold securities list, but GameStop is not. Now, if market makers short XRT or GMEU, but can't find shares to deliver, they either buy ETF shares to cover or create new ETF shares via ETF creation baskets. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? Why not just buy more XRT or GMEU to not affect GameStop's price, or is that how it would actually work? Well, the ETF shares don't exist if they were naked shorted, and that's probably what created the FTDs in the first place. Now, brokers can't buy their way out if no one is selling real shares. They must create new shares, which means buying the basket, which means buying GameStop. Especially with GMEU, which is a leveraged fund. The liquidity is even thinner, making sourcing the underlying GME harder. So, plain and simple, the shares that were failed to deliver on the ETFs that put them on the threshold securities list aren't going to be able to be covered if they can't be located if they were naked shorted, which they probably were because they got on the threshold securities list from the ETFs, which means basically that buying pressure will immediately affect GameStop, but in how long? Well, normally they have a 13-day forced closing period if they sit on the threshold securities list for 13 days, aka they have not located shares to deliver. Now, in 2021, here's a real case example that happened. XRT had record fails to deliver due to massive naked shorting of the ETF instead of GameStop directly. Now, when forced to deliver XRT, market makers had to create new XRT units, which required buying of GameStop, and this added to GameStop's buying pressure, which helped fuel the short squeeze from like $8 to $430 or $530 or something along the lines of that. So that is just one real world example. Now, is that going to happen right now? Well, it's possible, not necessarily, but it's possible. And we are on the verge of what we think is going to be a major run up with GameStop stock. And that is basically the intro to this video, but it doesn't end there. JPY 10-year yields, we always take a look at as the Japanese yen carry trade unwind, what Roaring Kitty hinted at and all that other stuff. Well, what's interesting is they keep intervening, and I see this as correlation to his waiting post. Bank of Japan offers to lend government debt on the spot, and this is about the 15th time they've done this. But why, and what does it mean? Well, Japan runs yield curve control, YCC. They target specific interest rates like the 10-year Japanese government bond, which we always take a look at those yields. And if those yields start to spike, demand for certain bonds rise. By lending those bonds, the Bank of Japan relieves pressure and suppresses unwanted rate movements without buying more bonds outright. Dealers, hedge funds, and banks might need Japanese government bonds to settle trades or post collateral, which we know they do. And if they can't get them and there's a shortage, it causes friction. So Bank of Japan steps in to prevent a fail to deliver scenario or repo market stress. So here's the basic connection if that doesn't sound like plain English. The carry trade unwind pressure. Global investors borrow in yen at low interest and invest in U.S. risk assets like tech stocks or speculative plays, including possibly GameStops. And if Japanese government bond yields spike or the yen strengthens, carry trade unwind. investors are forced to sell risk assets like GameStop to repay yen debts, which causes a broader deleveraging and hurts momentum stocks. Now, Bank of Japan lending Japanese government bonds, trying to suppress Japanese government yield spikes, keep the carry trade alive and indirectly supports risk on trades like the swaps in GameStop, which basically delays everything that we're waiting for. Hedge funds that short GameStop often leverage across global assets, including using Japanese government bonds as safe collateral. And if the Japanese government bond market gets illiquid, it stresses their collateral base. They may pull capital from riskier short plays, or face margin calls, or force GME covering, or Bank of Japan lending. Bank of Japan lending keeps their collateral access smooth and avoiding sudden GameStop squeezes unless other pressure builds. Now, this is also, on the bright side, a system of systematic fragility. In other words, it kind of validates what we're waiting for. Frequent Bank of Japan intervention is a canary in the coal mine and shows global liquidity is fragile, and one trigger, a short squeeze or earnings catalyst, can break risk control mechanisms. And if Bank of Japan fails to contain it and yields run, global sell-offs or panic squeezes like GameStop become more likely. So Bank of Japan lending debt on the spot is propping up more global leverage, delaying the carry trade unwind, and temporarily protecting GameStop short sellers. That is the breakdown. I want to put another squeeze play on your radar. This is ticker symbol BNZI. We've talked about it in the past, but it's up 24%. And this little guy also showed up on the threshold securities list, and it looks like it's building a bottom. Speaking of building a bottom, you know what? I'll bring up that stock a little bit later. Real quick, let's jump into the market. President Trump says tariffs are having a huge positive impact on the stock market. Trump also said it would be 1929 all over again and a Great Depression if radical left court ruled against us. Also, the U.S. stock market is now trading over 28% dark. We officially have the least transparent market in the world, which brings us into the SPY, 637.17. Got a major bounce off of this bottom, making higher highs, higher lows, fighting the breakout out of this wedge on the 4-hour. Now, if we bring up the daily time frame, which I think is important, here is what we see. We saw this consolidation, and then I said if we open a candle above this range, we got a pretty good candle here with a longer, lower wick and a close above this region right around 632. And then today we printed a green candle off of that. This looks pretty good. It looks better the shallower you go. So like 4-hour looks pretty good. Daily looks good. And then the weekly is something that you really have to watch for. And this comes as today. If this entire green candle eats up and closes above this red bearish engulfing candle, that would be a pretty good signal. However, if we don't do that and we don't close above 637.60 or 638, which we are very close, right? And we still have a few hours left of the trading day, then things could be bad coming into next week, but only temporarily. And it could be temporarily down fast. And I also think it's healthier if we do correct because the SPY has not really had a major correction yet. And I think that should happen just so that we can get a healthier pullback and more money can enter the markets for a move higher. Apple has not stopped, up another 4.5%, trading at 230. Here's what I said. A gap over this region or trading above this region that we tested several times is likely going to get us a move to the top of the wedge. Top of the wedge breakout is likely going to get us a move up towards 233, all of which basically happened, but we only came up to about 231. Apple still looks very strong. Another stock that's trading very similarly is Tesla. We broke below this wedge, back into it, consolidated, and then had a nice breakout above that wedge. Now, watch Tesla for a close above 331.30 today. UNH, something we talked about. I said it could be a buying opportunity at 237.77. You can see we're actually building a base here, getting a nice little W pattern. I think UNH is likely to retest at least 265, and we're trading at 249. I think at some point, this is basically a free 7% trade, free 6 to 7% trade in the next couple of weeks. Bitcoin, let's talk about it very quickly, 116,500. Bitcoin had to get above 117, close above 117, and still can by Sunday. We also talked about it on the daily. It looks a little bit better. This is the channel that we want to get above and hold above, but you can see we came above it and then got smacked back down. Bitcoin's at an interesting point. I think crypto as a whole can have that one last move like we talked about for Bitcoin up to 131 or so, and with momentum could bring you into the 150s, and then following that it could come crashing down. Either way, no matter what happens, I have been saying that kind of late August we should see a peak on alts, and that is becoming more and more likely as Ethereum reaches 4,000. Now, I want to make this very important point of the video. Ethereum at 4,000. If you get a Sunday close of Ethereum, a weekly candle close this Sunday above 4,000, I am re-entering into altcoins, and that is what I will state, because I believe Ethereum will have a much faster move alongside Bitcoin, coming up to about 7K. Well, it has at least that scenario, that possibility, which is about a 70 to 75% gain, as I only see for Bitcoin, if we get one last push, a 15 to maybe 40% gain. But alongside the alts, I think they're going to really get some momentum if Ethereum decides to close above that. And I will probably be re-entering a good chunk of them after that. So again, watch that level. We'll talk about it in the videos. Make sure to have post notifications on, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Guys, if you're not in my Discord server, it's the top link in the description. I'll also pin it in the top comments. Make sure to join. Come talk stocks and crypto with me and the most amazing people all day long. Best vibes, best family in there. You also see my trades when I take them, all that other stuff, and we have tons of alerts. So get in the Discord, guys. It is well worth it. I appreciate all the support. Make sure to drop a comment. I love you all. Enjoy your weekend. God bless. Lottery Stocks out.